Iowa's News Now Sports has your all-access pass to all things Hawkeyes. This is Eye on the Hawks.
There's some turbulence out there. Certainly, I thought our guys kept playing. A lot to be proud of that way. And but the bottom line is you got to play clean football against a team like this. We weren't able to do that.
Boy, Kirk Ferentz had no idea how prophetic he was being when he talked about turbulence. Welcome to an Eye on the Hawks podcast episode where this episode has gotten a significant amount more interesting over the last 3 hours. We have Owen Sebring and Mike Howell with us this week. Make sure you follow us on all the social media platforms that you're accustomed to with YouTube and with X and Facebook for Eye on the Hawks and Iowa's News Now. You can find all the stuff there. But there's a lot to cover today. This morning when I woke up...
There's some breaking news?
Breaking the sound effects for LaShawn Williams, who just announced on Instagram that he's entering the transfer portal. Iowa's RB1 from the 2023 season, 1,000-yard career rusher for the Hawkeyes. He's leaving. I can't read this from this. Can you give me...
Yeah, I'll just do a little breakdown. I appreciate the love and support throughout my time in black and gold with the countless moments of excitement on the field. You've made every game unforgettable to my teammates. I'm grateful for the sacrifices you made. The bond will last a lifetime. However, after careful consideration, I've decided to enter the transfer portal to pursue new opportunities. This was not an easy decision, but I believe it's the best path forward for my personal as well as athletic growth.
Just wild moment for me. I mean, I don't think that if this would have happened in December, I wouldn't be terribly shocked, but to see it happen in early October is what really gobsmacked me. Mike, did this surprise you, or what were your initial thoughts when you saw it?
I was kind of shocked. I think we were shocked in the spring when no running back transferred, exactly. And we thought maybe Jazz Patterson, was almost the low man on the totem pole. But he stuck around. He looks to be the second-string running back. Now, LaShawn has been hurt. He's been banged up since camp. I don't know if his injury is more significant than we kind of thought. He hasn't been on the two deeps in the past 2 weeks, and hasn't played since Troy, maybe?
He officially played in 3 games this year.
Yeah.
He played Illinois State. Yes, he played against Illinois State, played against Iowa State, and played against Troy. Was that Mitch Cullen? Yes, so he did get in three games, 9 yards, 3 yards, and 9 yards are his total statistical numbers for this season. So, we just don't see a lot of guys, at least from this program, hop into the portal in October. So that's what really stuck out to me. He was a guy that last year was, to speak to his numbers from last year, he was the running back that everybody was talking about this season. We've kind of mentioned how Caleb Johnson has emerged a little bit as the RB1 and has done such incredible things in the backfield. But LaShawn Williams is the one who was the preseason fourth-team All-Big Ten on the Doak Walker Award watch list. Like, everybody was talking about what this guy could do, and injuries certainly hampered him. And I don't know how much that played into it, or possibly just seeing the writing on the wall that, boy, with Caleb and with Jazz and with Kamari Moulton getting a lot of touches, maybe my time at Iowa just has come to an end. Any other theories that you might have, Mike?
I don't like to speculate much, publicly. I do think you hit it on the nail on the head, though. Just buried on the depth chart. I'm assuming, and maybe Kirk will, answer some more questions tomorrow. Yeah. The injury must be more severe than he thought. Yeah. And this is going on one of his last seasons. You got to make the most of your career, especially if you're a college athlete. I don't think he has too many pro prospects, but maybe if he goes to a smaller school and has a higher workload, maybe he could, build something at least.
He has 2 years of eligibility remaining.
Okay.
Yep, because he only played in 3 games in 21, then played in 12 and 14 each of the last 2 years, and then played in 3 games this year. So he's got 2 years left to serve somewhere else. Coach Ferentz, I'm sure, going to get a lot of questions about LaShawn, what happens there, and I'm sure going to get a lot of questions about Caleb Brown, who just today, Caleb announced that he is taking the rest of the season as a redshirt, so he will not play any more games this season for the Hawkeyes.
Got to think he's leaving too, right? Actually,
I was composing a post on X to say, Caleb Brown has played his last downs, but he did not really say that, so we cannot say yet whether or not he's played his last down as a Hawkeye.
So Chad Leisico from the Des Moines Register is reporting that this is his last game. He won't be back as a Hawkeye.
Okay.
I think he's citing sources, so nothing official, but there's no reason not to trust Chad's reporting, right?
Yeah.
But the way this whole thing has played out with Caleb Brown, he looked like the best receiver on Iowa's roster last year. At the end of the year, Tim Lessers a few weeks ago was raving about his one-handed catches in practice.
So
yeah, you could see the talent when he had the ball last year. He just played one snap against Minnesota the last game and was held out this week. A surprise injury that Kirk Ferentz said was a soft tissue, but now I'm kind of speculating, is that inaccurate, or was he just did he make up his mind in the bye week? Who knows?
Yeah.
We'll probably never know that.
Right.
But it's just another weird turn of events. I've seen some fans comment he has one catch on the year, who cares? I think his upside was higher than what he's shown, and whether he couldn't, the theories of why he didn't get on the field. He had a DUI over the summer, was in the doghouse, suspended for the first game. If that had something to do with it, I understand that. But it's just disappointing that talent couldn't be realized in a Hawkeye jersey.
Yeah. So are we going to just continue on the assumption that he's gone? I mean, again,
based off Chad's reporting, I'm comfortable.
Chad's,
yeah.
And based on the post itself, it's it would be, at this point, frankly, I would be very surprised if Caleb Brown is back in a Hawkeye uniform. So
I read LaShawn's post. Here's Caleb's. I've decided to utilize my redshirt year and will not be playing any additional games this season. I wish my teammates the best of luck this season and hope for their continued success of the program. It sounds to me like,
Yeah, that last part especially makes it sound like he's kind of done with the Hawkeyes.
Mm-hmm.
So that too comes as, frankly, it's surprising to see it now, but it's not surprising to see it happen. Just like the way everything has turned out with him, it's just been. It just doesn't seem like it was ever the right fit having Caleb Brown here. I mean, the talent was certainly there, and the times that he did get his hand on the ball, there were things happening. I mean, the guy could make moves, and the guy clearly has a ton of talent, but it seems like he just never quite fit in the system, or the pieces just quite weren't there, whether it was under Brian Ferentz or under Tim Lester. Things just weren't happening with Caleb Brown out there like you would think that they should have been after being such a high recruit out of college, after coming from Ohio State. He was a guy that a lot of people were looking forward to, and just never quite materialized.
And if you're watching on YouTube, here exactly is what Chad said. The story has been updated to reflect that Caleb Brown has likely played his final snap at Iowa. I read the article, and it didn't further explain, but I'm sure he has sources inside the program and stuff like that. So, just an unfortunate, and does it have anything to do with the game on Saturday, do you think? I mean, or is it just unfortunate timing?
Yeah, just is it just a coincidence that it happened around Ohio State? Is that what you're wondering?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the narrative coming into the week was is this going to be the Caleb Brown breakout game? He's going up against his former team, going back to his old house. This is a game where he finally shines. And instead, this is the storyline that we take out of the Ohio State week. 2 hours
before kickoff, we realized that he's out. When I saw it, I'm like, huh, no one ever mentioned that. At least, on Tuesday, media availability. And it sounds like, at least if you're listening from Kirk, it sounded like the injury was on Wednesday, so they wouldn't have known. Okay. But now he's gone from the program. We think, obviously things can change, and the transfer portal doesn't open until December, so finalities on that will have to yet to be realized. But it's definitely kind of been a whirlwind kind of couple hours.
Yes.
We're getting ready for a podcast to talk about a 35-7 loss against Ohio State.
And I will continue to say, I mean, in almost all scenarios, if not all, we want the best for these guys. I think that, and from the reactions I see from Hawkeye fans as a whole, I don't think that anybody's wishing any ill will on them. It seems like people are for Caleb Brown especially, people are saying he never got utilized to his full capacity, and the strengths weren't there, or they weren't showing on the field. I know that that's kind of the fan take. The coaches would maybe say something a little different, but it just didn't seem like it was ever a good fit. But Caleb Brown, if he can find a good spot to be excellent on a roster somewhere, that's terrific for him. LaShawn Williams, just the injuries that he's had this year have really hampered his progression as a Hawkeye. And I think, as I mentioned, he just saw the writing on the wall. I think that he was just going to start getting buried on the depth chart with how good Caleb's been and how Jazz looks like he might be the next guy, assuming Caleb Johnson, we need to start clarifying, jumps to the NFL probably after this season. the Jazz might be the next guy in line. So LaShawn just wanted better opportunity for more playing time, and more power to him. Like that's what is going to be best for him.
And I do think they have some talented young running backs too that might get in the mix next year. But I think we need to take both of them and look at them in separate stories, right? Mm-hmm. It looks like the Caleb Brown thing. I would lump that into the recent 4 or 5 years where playmakers at Iowa show a little bit and then transfer. I mean, there's a long list of them, and I think they're a different, unique situation. When you think of Charlie Jones, who there was no ill will or anything like that, but just had 15 catches or 20 catches on the year, went to Purdue and had like an amazing season. Now he's in the NFL. Tyrone Tracy, the same boat, played wide receiver, switched to running back at Purdue, and now he had 130 yards in an NFL game yesterday.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
for the Giants.
Catch that. Wow.
I mean, there's some others too that haven't quite panned out, like Arlen Bruce. I think he's out, right?
He is
from gambling
not on. I don't think Arlen Bruce is on a team right now. As far as I know, I've tried to follow him on IG just to see what is happening, and I see him doing workouts at high school fields, but I can't seem to track him down on any actual roster at the moment.
Yeah, and then just
Keegan Johnson.
Keegan Johnson for Kansas State. I don't think he's had that much of a breakout year, but it regardless of what they do, it's just the trend.
Yeah.
Receivers come in, they don't pan out, and they leave before their potential is realized. And that's why Iowa's wide receiver core, while I think Jacob Gill and Reese Vandersee has shown a lot better than the past few years, it's still pretty bare, especially when you're comparing it to teams that they're playing, like Ohio State last week. Yeah. I mean, it's unfair to compare to Ohio State's wide receiving core, I think, any Big Ten team, but, it's just you don't have that reliable, explosive playmakers that other teams do.
And I do think that, there's certainly more. This is why I especially take Caleb Brown's situation different from Tyrone and Charlie, just because there is a new OC who appears to be targeting the wide receivers a lot more. I mean, obviously with Reese Vandersee and Jacob Gill getting a lot more touches, the opportunities are there a lot more to show your numbers. And I don't know if I see it continuing to be a trend with these guys that are doing so well, like Reese Vandersee. I picture him staying a Hawkeye. Jacob Gill, I think that he stays a Hawkeye even with some good numbers that he's putting up. So I don't know. It's tricky to figure out, what these guys imagine for themselves, what they think about what their career was supposed to be and what they have envisioned for it. So I don't know. Do you think Caleb Brown stays Power 5 somewhere else?
That's a good question. Or Power 4, I guess it's now.
Power 4, yes.
I am not sure. I would doubt it just because he had a lack of resume at Iowa.
Yeah.
I mean,
and at Ohio State.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, he was buried behind some NFL receivers, so it's fair to not have one, especially when you're switching to a position. I would just venture to say he'll probably go Group of 5, and immediate playing time wherever he goes, stuff like that. Maybe even lower, who knows? But I always have a hard time gauging that kind of thing for outgoing transfers. Unless they're high market players.
Yeah. I could see, either Group 5 or I think maybe lower tier Power 4. He's from Chicago, so I don't know if he wants to stay in the Midwest, but I mean, maybe he ends up at Minnesota. I mean, if he wants to go another Big Ten school, that's in the lower half of the Big Ten, maybe a Minnesota's a place for him. A Nebraska might be a place for him. I don't know. That's all speculation right now, and we're going to hear from Kirk Ferentz tomorrow, and we'll have another Eye on the Hawks podcast on Wednesday where we get a chance to talk a little bit more about some of these developments, and maybe something else is going to happen over the next few hours. Again, with this 4-game redshirt situation, it's there's a lot of guys that are making those business decisions right now. Sorry, did you have something else, Mike?
Oh, I just Hair Trigger corrected me, and I'm glad he did because Keegan Johnson has 14 catches for 161 yards this year. So not bad. Last year he had 24 catches for 227 yards on the year at Kansas State.
Yeah, he's doing all right down there.
So, the last point that you made about, I'm sorry, I just blanked on it. What did you just say about tomorrow?
I was just speculating about a location for Caleb.
He
might end up.
I'm excited to hear tomorrow about what Kirk has to say about this. I'm sure he will probably stay tight-lipped on those stuff, but I think when you talk to players, they might know a little bit if they're willing to answer questions on that. So.
And that is one that I'm always a little bit hesitant to ask him, only because I kind of know the answer that the player's going to give. And I think we already, well, Kirk will shed a little bit more light, I think, maybe. But because I think it is a good question to ask, like, especially about Caleb Brown. Was there actually an injury, or was that like, was he still already discussing this? I'd be kind of curious if, like, these are conversations that he's had with these guys for a while, if LaShawn has been thinking about this, if Caleb had thought about, like, maybe I'll redshirt this year. I don't know. I'd be curious if this is a conversation he's had for a while or if it just kind of came up in the last few days. The players overall, I think that they're all just going to say, hey, we're going to miss them, wish them the best, etc. I'd be surprised if we get anything more than that. But barring any more breaking news that happens over the next hour while we're recording, let's talk about Ohio State, the game that happened on Saturday. First and foremost, Mike, speaking on behalf of Hawkeye fans, was there anything Saturday that surprised you? Did the outcome surprise you? Was there anything that was a shock to you? I'd say that I mean, we were shocked, we were surprised a little bit, only that we, in our predictions, picked Iowa to cover the 20-point spread. So we did not get that correct.
Yeah.
But outside of that, anything that really, like, surprised you?
Our predictions were overall kind of bad,
Bad week.
for game picks.
Yep.
I don't think it surprised me. I think once I saw the game flow, I guess it was kind of surprising that they were only down 7.5. But the kind of things we talked about last week, I mean, in the first half, I think they were +3 on the turnover margin, and which is great for Iowa, right? If you're going to win a game like that, you have to be have a big swing in the turnovers. But they couldn't get points out of any of them.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I kind of thought they'd be able to do. They were able to move a little bit between the 40s. Never got to the red zone. And that first drive, I don't know if you were watching it, but man, Caden Weegan was wide open. And
Really?
we talk about making the missables, or making the makeables, right?
Yeah.
And Cade did make a good play to get out of the pocket and go to his right. But if he just puts it in front of him, I think Iowa's up 7-0. And then the missed field goal, I mean, if it's 10-7 at half, it's obviously better than 7-0. I still think Ohio State pulls ahead, That 4-drive stretch where they scored 4 straight times was really damning. It's like, man, this is a talented team. And Iowa, like, it felt like a flood wall just bracing for a major flood, and you knew it was going to break.
Yeah.
And then at some point it just overflew.
Yeah, and I think that was a question that people had at halftime. Like, as we've talked about the tale of two halves every game, it's like, maybe our good half's coming in the second half, and maybe we're going to pull this off, but that was not the case. In terms of some of the things that went poorly on Saturday, there was, I feel like maybe you would not say there was a tale of two halves in this game. I mean, the first half, they stayed in it, but if that's your good half, being down 7-0, then that's not a great sign.
If you're really looking for things that, were positives, I thought Cade played pretty well in the first half, right? He had a pretty good percentage of completion percentage, but they were like smaller gains. I think they started 3 for 4 on third down conversions, which is a positive.
Yeah.
Now, when you go to the second half and he fumbles twice on hits, not really his fault, but you got to get the ball out. He was pressured a lot on Saturday, so Ohio State was like daring him to beat him, and you just kind of knew that wasn't going to happen. And then he threw the pick, which was deflected, and I thought the corner like shoved the receiver out of the way. And Ohio State's lucky it was deflected, because then you can do pass interference on deflections. So, the turnovers were kind of harsh. It was a vastly improved game from 2 years ago at Ohio State when, Spencer Petras throws a pick on the first play, and then, you make the quarterback switch and Padilla fumbles the snap. So I guess if you're looking for positives, you can find some in those. I'm kind of disappointed the running game never got going, but I think Ohio State was planning for that. Like, hey, we're going to stop you. And he didn't get his yards until the second half, where he broke one and got that 26-yard touchdown in the third or fourth quarter.
Yeah, fourth quarter, 6 minutes left or something like that. Did they run a fake punt in that Ohio State game 2 years ago? I feel like they did, and Torrey Taylor got it.
You're testing my knowledge, and I'm not sure.
Like, I didn't think about it until just this second when we were talking about some of the special team stuff, but I'm pretty sure that they ran a fake punt at Ohio State 2 years ago, and then that was part of the story about this game as well. Now was the fake punt that wasn't. So I guess you can't say they ran 2 fake punts at Columbus, but they at least lined up for it. talking about the turnovers, again, I wasn't like super tuned into the game outside of like just following on my phone, following on the app. But you say that Cade, you felt like he looked
in the first
all right
half
at times?
He was efficient passing, and there were some plays that he made that I thought last year for sure, and maybe earlier in the year he wouldn't have made, but they weren't like over-the-top explosive plays. Mm-hmm. There was one play, I think Sawyer hit him once, and he like did a Patrick Mahomes kind of pass to get the ball out to Lachey. Now it ended with a 1-yard loss, so like the play didn't, vastly improve.
Yeah.
He had a nice third down throw over the middle to Jacob Gill, which was probably his longest completion, which was around 20 to 25 yards, and was accurate when he could get the ball out.
Yeah.
Now the one first drive, there was a broken play. Cade rolls out to his right. Caden Weegan jets behind the defense, and if you see the screenshot, he's like wide open. Now if he makes a touchdown, who knows? But Cade underthrew it, and it was an incomplete pass on third down. So like that's one where it's like, man, if you could just make that play, Iowa could set up the score, and then it's a different ball game. But I don't think it really would have mattered in the end.
Yeah.
Just with those explosive weapons in the back end.
Yeah. So his last couple games, his last 2 games, he's gone under 100 yards, 98 against Ohio State, 62 against Minnesota. Against Iowa State, only had 99. So 3 of his 5 games this year, he's been under 100 yards. He has not thrown a touchdown since the Illinois State game. In the last 4 games, he's thrown 3 interceptions. And a lot of people are asking the question that has been asked so often over the last 4 years about quarterback changes, quarterback controversy, and Kirk continues to have to try to shut it down, and that's exactly what he was trying to do on Saturday after the game.
No, we evaluate every position, week to week, but we're comfortable. I think Cade's improving. I really do, and it sounds funny, with the turnovers today, but I think seems more comfortable. His timing seems better. He was getting the ball out really well. Hit some turbulence out there. Certainly, I thought our guys kept playing. A lot to be proud of that way, and but the bottom, we evaluate every position, week to week, but we're comfortable. I think Cade's improving. I really do, and it sounds funny, with the turnovers today, but I think seems more comfortable. His timing seems better. He was getting the ball out really well in the first half. So, we have to improve as a collective offense, but we'll evaluate everything. But I figured that would trigger something today. That's a lot of bad things happened today, and that probably one of them. Not that I was glad to see Brendan run, like he can do that, and he's done a good job in practice. But we're not ready to, I think, have a controversy at that point or at that position.
Apologies there. I tried to take the lower third off, and I triggered another soundbite to go off, but he was just talking about the end, like getting Brendan Sullivan in the game. He had one drive, and it resulted in Iowa's only score. He had a big rushing play that resulted in a first down, and then Caleb scored on a 26-yard run. So I guess this is the question that's floating around, and I think it's warranted. I think it's not, I think we have to ask, like, should there be a quarterback change, right?
Yeah. Do you think there should be a quarterback change?
I am conflicted on this because I agree with him that Cade has been improving, but at the same time, I think the way Iowa's offense is, I think hitting his potential with Iowa needs like a big-armed quarterback to throw down the field if you're going to not be able to run. And I just don't think Cade's that. His arm strength isn't as what it was at Michigan. The thing that intrigues me in Sullivan, obviously, his passing game we haven't been able to see at Iowa. Last year against with Northwestern against Maryland, he looked like he was a competent passer, right? Against better defenses, not so much, but again, there's a talent gap. The aspect of running the ball and getting the quarterback run game in this, which would help, I think, the offensive line and Caleb Johnson's running game, intrigues me. And I think maybe the offense would be better run if there was that threat.
Yeah.
Now, if he comes in and throws, a lot of interceptions, which Cade hadn't done outside of that second half against Ohio State, then is it hurting your team more? So I guess I don't think it's going to happen, so it's almost a moot point for me to say otherwise, but I wouldn't mind seeing it.
Yeah, and this is why I understand where Kirk comes from when he doesn't want to make changes at quarterback, even though like the fans just like go nuts about it. I get it for 2 reasons. Number one is that like if you're a coach and your team is winning, you just don't want to mess with the formula. Whatever you're doing, you're like, okay, we're winning games. I mean, last year they won 10 games, so it's like as long as we keep winning, Deacon Hill might stink up the joint, but let's just not change anything. Let's just keep things as they are, and let's not mess with what is happening because we're still winning. And that, I think, has been the model the last few years for Iowa. Even though the quarterback play just stinks to high heaven, they still just don't want to mess with something because they don't want to potentially screw with a dynamic that's out there that is getting them wins. And so if they keep winning, if they win this Saturday against Washington, Michigan State, Northwestern, these are all very winnable games coming up for them. If they can win all those three, then I think that Cade stays in there. But if things go sideways in a couple of these next 3 games, they've got Wisconsin after that, which is a tougher one, then I think that we could see Brendan coming in there. I think if they lose against Washington, I think we see Brendan Sullivan is maybe my bold prediction at this point.
That'd be fair. And again, it's just for what Iowa's looking for, I think Cade does a serviceable job.
Yeah.
But I think what Iowa's looking for in offense is like 15 years ago kind of college football stuff. If you want to move the ball, with this offense, without maybe the explosive weapons that other teams have, I think you just have to have that 11v11. You have to have someone account for the quarterback, and Cade can't give you that right now. You know, you see it in the red zone when those red zone packages work. Someone has to point at Sullivan, and that's why it didn't work against Iowa State. Is because they could just all right, we're not going to let you rush this ball in.
Yeah.
There's just a different dynamic, and I think it would help at the end of the day.
Yeah.
This offense.
Yeah. I feel bad for Cade because I think that, even though these guys are not on social media, I'm sure that it's hard to not be aware of the fact that fans are wanting a quarterback change. That fans are talking about, we want to see Brendan, and this is when you talk about guys whose time at Iowa has not panned out the way that they hoped or planned. Cade McNamara certainly falls into that category as well. And Brendan Sullivan too, that's the thing that I'm sure that Kirk is worried about as well when you make a quarterback change is okay, what if he does start Brendan Sullivan these next 2 games and he stinks? What if he throws 4 interceptions and you just never know what happens. Then what? Then, okay, now we're going to go back to Cade. I think that Kirk really would want to avoid any chance of a quarterback carousel where, all right, in this game it's going to be Cade. Now we're going to do Brendan, but he stinks, and so we're going to do this guy. So I think that he would want to exhaust every possible opportunity before making an actual change.
Yeah, the ironic part is this offense is a lot better than it was last year.
Oh yeah.
Which isn't saying much because they were last place in the country.
Yep.
But I think it just depends on what your expectations were. And this was a team that I know internally and a lot of fans thought could make a run at the playoff. And you're just not going to get that with Cade, I don't think. I don't see that 5 games through the season. The quarterback play is just not there, and it's one of the most important aspects of college football these days. In 2003 when, Nathan Chandler was the quarterback, he didn't really move very well. He had a cannon, though. I guess it's a little different scenario. But he wasn't that playmaker with his feet. You could do that. You could win like that. But I think if you're going to do that this day and age, you need a talent discrepancy on the lines, which when Iowa does have, that's why they win the West, like last year, they can win games. And the good part is they can win every game on their schedule remaining, I think at least.
Oh, yeah.
They'll be in the Nebraska game, too. I mean, that's probably the toughest one outside of maybe Washington. I'm still kind of confused with this Washington team. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to watch it today or tomorrow.
You think those are both tougher than Wisconsin? I mean,
yeah.
Okay. Maryland, too?
Yeah. I mean, again, Wisconsin lost their starting quarterback, so Braden Locke's in there.
Yeah.
They just had a running back opt out for the year, too.
Really?
Yeah. So.
Yeah, okay. These are all winnable games, and I still am not sure if – so there's 7 games left on the schedule. I counted those up right, didn't I?
Yep.
7 games left. Do 7 wins get you into the CFP? With this quality of schedule, I don't know. It would take a lot to happen, which, I mean, if you're a Hawkeye fan rooting for other things to be happening, a lot of those things happen on Saturday. I mean, they need a lot of chaos with top teams losing and there to be a lot more parity this year for them to have a shot at getting there. But you have to win out from here if you want even to be in the conversation for a CFP. In terms of wrapping up some of the things that went poorly on Saturday, the other thing, I mean, it was a small thing, but special teams, Drew Stevens, kind of disappointed to see him miss his first field goal of the year. It was a, 54-yard or something like that?
I think it was 51.
51, yeah. I mean, it was lengthy. It's a tough field goal to make in a hostile environment. But with how well he'd done, you kind of hope to see him make something like that, and that too would have made things just slightly more interesting if they are not getting shut out in the first half. And then there was, of course, the fake punt scenario. There's been some discussion about that. I know it was a former Hawkeye Tyler Kluver, is that right?
Yeah.
Former Hawkeye long snapper weighed in and said that Kirk made the right call he saw something he didn't like, and so he called timeout. But that doesn't help also the fans that are like, oh, we would have had it.
Yeah, I wasn't as mad as other fans were about this play call. In retrospect, at the time, I'm like, of course they get the first down and you call a timeout. But Kirk was asked about it on Saturday, so I'll just let him do the talking real quick.
Field position is what I was thinking. It was a tight ball game, and again, maybe that's too conservative, but at that point, our thought was let's pin them in, and which we've done a pretty good job of this year. But today wasn't a great example of the punting the way we want to. But I thought it was pin them in, maybe force a turnover or something like that, or get the ball back in good field position. Yep. And then the other part is not a lot about giving them the ball midfield. I'm not sure I want them to have to go 99, but midfield's a little, at that point we're right in the middle of things. The other one we were, obviously thinking about a fake punt. And we felt good about that until, I called a timeout, saw their linebackers kind of nudging up to the line. They had been coached on that during the timeout. I think their coach was out in the middle of the field. Looked like a high school game a little bit. But, we still were going to give it a shot until I saw those guys coming towards the line.
So that's a little bit to what Kluver was saying, that the look wasn't there. It was there, I think, earlier in the game. And when you watch the game, during that play, the linebackers start to creep up, and the call is on, so Kirk runs and calls a timeout. It's unfortunate, too, when you're talking about field position and pinning them back when the next punt is 22 yards and it goes out at the Ohio State 30. So, and Ohio State's first play was a 21-yard gain, so they gained it all in one play anyway. So I understand that theory, and I respect it to an extent that you're in a close game. You don't want to give Ohio State any gimmies, right?
Yeah.
Totally get that. At the same time, you're going to have to make plays. You're going to have to get on the scoreboard at some point. So when you're that close, I guess it's not even that close. It's near midfield. One of those times, you gotta gamble, or they're just going to, death by 1,000 cuts. It's going to happen. Ohio State's coming. You have to gain some sort of advantage,
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing to be said is that, they lost to an Ohio State team that is now ranked number 2 in the country and, could be number 1 before long. They're a team that looks outstanding, the part of a potential national champion. It's only going to hurt Iowa's case that, we only have, imagine at the end of the year if they went out, we only have 2 losses. Well, yes, and they're against teams that, obviously, Ohio State's great. Iowa State now in a position to potentially be in the CFP. They're ranked, I think, 11th in this latest poll, I believe. So it's yes, but you still didn't beat the ranked teams. Why would we put you in here with some CFP caliber teams when you guys clearly have an inability to beat to score against ranked opponents, which is, again, a conversation that they keep. Even though they did score technically fourth quarter a touchdown that meant nothing, they still just cannot pull it off against a ranked team. It just does not happen these last few years.
And I don't know if they'll get another chance at it. Yeah. Maybe in a bowl game.
Yeah.
Or if Nebraska's ranked, but they haven't looked as strong. They did beat Rutgers 14-7, which I think it's a good Rutgers team. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah. In terms of what went well, there's not a whole lot to cover here from the game on Saturday. Just a few things to notch down were that Jay Higgins had, what could be called his best game of the year, 14 tackles, a season high for him. He was best Iowa player on the field. He caused that fumble. I don't know if you saw that. Big play, ran over and punched the ball out. From the opposite, across the body, had to punch it out too. Yeah. Just, he's one of the players that you're like, man, if there were 10 other Jays out there, but he's such a great player, and I think he proved that he could play amongst those NFL players. So, and it's funny because that was the soundbite that he gave us on last Tuesday when we were talking about Ohio State. Just boy, what's it like just going up against all these incredible players that are going to be in the NFL? And what Jay told us was that, I want to play in the NFL one day, and so if you want to play in the NFL, you're gonna have to play against NFL caliber players, and so that's what we're doing at Ohio State. And so he was kind of looking forward to that challenge, and clearly rose to that challenge. And it's games like that probably do help Jay Higgins' draft stock to see what he can do against a team like that with a lot of future first-round draft picks on the roster. Caleb Johnson's play as a whole, again, a little bit inflated stats at the end of the game with a 20-plus yard run and getting the touchdown. 86 yards,
56 of it on 2 plays in the second half, so.
I mean, numbers are numbers. What are you going to do? But, he at least keeps his numbers a little bit up. Certainly, I think that this takes him out of the – if he was in the Heisman discussion, I think this takes him out of it for a while. I mean, he'd have to put up a lot more big games to get back in there.
Yeah, this was kind of like the Heisman moment. I don't think it was serious. I know we kind of joked about it.
Yeah.
But Boise State's running back, Ashton Genty, really is the one running back that I think has a ticket to New York, at least at this point in the season.
Yeah.
I thought the broadcast did him a little dirty, just that quote saying that I wouldn't have gone to Ohio State if they offered me, because he was highlighting the difference between being born in Cincinnati and, not everyone's Ohio State fan down there.
Right. But
they played it up. And then, the Ohio State media was bulletin board material for their defense. Jack Sawyer commented on it. A little bit. That's why players don't say anything, is because the media makes it a bit, a mountain out of a molehill. What's that phrase?
You got it.
Mountain out of a molehill. Okay.
You got it.
Boom. I got one right. But yeah, he was just couldn't get a lot of room in the first half. And I don't know if I would have liked them to go back to him more in the first half, even more than they did, because I don't have the carries in front of me, but it seemed like Jazz had a couple series in there too, and he just really couldn't get anything going in the first half.
Yeah. I'm always so suspect about bulletin board stuff. Would he have had more yards if he had not said anything about that on Tuesday?
Probably not.
I don't know. I mean, Ohio State is Ohio State. They're going to come out motivated and wanting to shut him down no matter what. So I don't know if that really made any sort of difference. What were the running numbers? So Caleb, 15 carries. Jazz had 4 carries for 8 yards. So, along of Brendan Sullivan. I'm looking at this right, yeah. Brendan Sullivan with a 30-yard run. Had the longest run of anybody on either roster, actually, on Saturday, oddly enough.
That was one thing that went well, too.
Yeah.
I only counted one explosive play from Ohio State, that big catch down the sideline to Jeremiah Smith that led to a touchdown.
Yep.
And then one, if I'm using Phil Parker's system of big play, big pass, big run, and explosives, one big pass play other than that one. So like a 25-yard pass to Miki Ibuka.
Yeah. That's the major win, I think, that you take out of it, is that, with as many great receivers as Ohio State has on the roster, Iowa did not give up those explosive plays like they have seemingly in every game coming up to this one. Outside of that 53-yard catch, Quinshawn Judkins had a carry of 21 yards. Brandon Ennis had a 21-yard catch. Those were the only ones that were even 20-plus yards for the rest of the game. I mean, everything else was pretty limited. Even though they gave up 35 points in this game, you have to think, this defense still has a lot in front of them going forward.
And that's kind of been the story when these teams play, the ranked teams, and you get to it was 96-0, and now whatever it is, 120-7 or whatever the exact score is the defense you can see can play, at least compete with them. But when the offense can't capitalize on turnovers or missed opportunities from the Buckeyes or from whatever team, when you can't make them pay, then the score's going to be lopsided no matter what.
Yeah.
So
Castro had his interception. It's all right.
Jay forced that fumble.
Yeah, they're putting them in a position to at least do something to make it interesting.
And there was a second fumble for Ohio State earlier in the game. So it's just you have to capitalize on those points. And I kind of realized in the first half when they didn't, even though it was only a 7-point game, I'm like, I don't think I was going to come out, victorious. Hopefully you could just keep it close. And that third quarter really, Ohio State came out on a mission and just kind of put it away.
Yeah, you kind of hope so, because that was kind of the same narrative during that Minnesota game and the Troy game, where it was boy, those opportunities are there. We just haven't capitalized on them. And in the second half, they did capitalize. And so there was maybe a thought at halftime, maybe Iowa just hasn't been quite capitalizing, and maybe they will in the second half. But
that was issued out against Iowa State too. They didn't really capitalize on those red zone opportunities. And if that game flips, then you're 4-1, and you're kind of feeling pretty good about it. This season at least.
Yeah.
Although I don't think Iowa State would be ranked at that point if they didn't beat Iowa. It's kind of a weird kind of, when you look at who's ranked, who lost when, and when they lost, it kind of matters. But at the same time, I think Iowa State's going to win a couple of these games in a row and get up there eventually. So it would look like a good win on your resume.
Right.
And so then you're looking at it and you're like, can you run the table and be 11-1? Then the college football playoff is more realistic. with 2 losses and not a really ranked team, middle of the pack Big Ten team, or I should say upper half of the Big Ten team, it's going to be hard to make that. Although I think you have to reallocate your expectations at this point.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard some people keep saying like, "Hey, this team can still win out, could still make the Big Ten championship game, could still be in Indy," and I'm like, "Whew." I mean, a lot of things have to go right for them to make that happen. It's not impossible, but there's going to have to be a lot of big things that start developing a lot more on offense, and there's going to be some other teams in the Big Ten that are going to have to lose a few more games for them to get there. Yeah, it was a game that like could have been there for him, and there are a lot of games left that can be there for him. From what you've seen, every week it's like we kind of feel like we have to readjust our thoughts of who this team is and what they are. At this point, Mike, what are your ideas about what they could do the rest of the season? I mean, at this point, do you see them as a team that could win out? Like, do you think that's a realistic possibility?
I do think they can win every game on the schedule. I don't think they will.
Okay.
I think they'll suffer a 3rd loss. Hopefully the departures from the team this year will galvanize the team, I think this matchup is probably, this one coming up is kind of sneaky. A Michigan State night game is probably tougher than we think.
Yeah.
I think Michigan State's offense is good if it doesn't turn the ball over, which is a big if, because they do it a lot. But if they limit their turnovers, Aiden Childs is a good quarterback, and he can give Iowa fits. So when you look through it, you're like, Iowa could win a lot of these games. But when you also look through it, you're like, Iowa could lose a lot of these games. A Maryland trip to D.C., in November sounds kind of tough.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at the win, you're like, okay, W. I don't think Northwestern, UCLA, they're kind of on the bottom half of the Big Ten right now. Nebraska will be tough, no matter what.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. When I look ahead, I just have they pulled this magic off last year and just kept winning games for the rest of the year, and found their way into the Big Ten title game. I just have a hard time seeing them repeat that same formula again, where you have a quarterback who's suspect for a lot of the year, with the defenses playing well, and just every little piece fell into place for the regular season for them to keep winning games. I just can lightning strike twice, and can they get back to being a 10-win team again? I just don't know if that's going to happen. I think that if they lose a game, there's a couple of losses out there. I don't know who they would be right now, but I am curious to see how this team responds next Saturday against Washington. And that's what we're going to be talking about with some of these players tomorrow morning. On Tuesday morning, we'll chat with the Hawkeyes and just reassess. We've got a lot to assess with these guys, how they bounce back from the Ohio State game. That's always kind of how it goes after a loss, is like, all right, how are you guys recuperating? Any injuries to deal with? 24-hour rule is always a thing. So,
do you think tomorrow's press availability is going to be dominated by these 2 departures? Or do you think it's more going to be like, okay, you need to win this game?
Yeah. I mean, we're going to ask about the departures, but I don't think they're going to give us much. With Kirk, I think it is going to be a lot about that. With the players, I mean, I think the way that we'll probably have to frame it is like with some of the guys who have withdrawn from the rest of the season for this team. Like you say, is this galvanizing you guys? Is this something that can be a uniting factor that can really bring people together on this team? That that rallying cry that we've heard before. So I don't know if that's going to be the narrative that we try to bring to the guys, and see if that holds weight or not. Maybe it's not. Maybe they're going to spin something differently for us. But I don't think the players are going to say a whole lot about Caleb and Sean. Kirk, I think that we're going to be getting a lot of that, and seeing if something else happens in the next 24 hours. If anybody else decides to pull the red shirt, or decides to go ahead and make that in-season move about entering the portal. Get a chance to talk to them about this first Washington game, first game against Washington as a Big Ten member, first game since the Sun Bowl. I think, did I see in a press release, since Sun Bowl in
Sounds about right.
90, what year?
6.
Oh, was that what it was? Yeah.
Well, Iowa played Washington in 91 at the Rose Bowl, but I think the Sun Bowl was after that.
Yeah, I think you're right. So anyway, we've got some intrigue to get to, and we have our third host who's going to be back with us on Wednesday. Is that right? Mitch is back on Wednesday.
He is, yes, and we should probably mention that Mitch is not out because the Iowa lost. He's out because he was at a wedding in Hawaii, and he's coming back.
Portal, and so he has withdrawn from the Iowa Hawks podcast.
Yeah, for real.
Saving his red shirt eligibility.
Speaking of Mitch, let's go over our pick'em for the
Yeah,
week.
boy.
Mitch did the best. He was 2-3. I lost every single game. Missed the Michigan State game, missed Purdue. I wish I would have flipped that. I didn't want to pick two big favorites. So I picked the big favorite, Oregon over Michigan State. And I was like, I think it's going to be a little bit closer, Purdue against Wisconsin. That was not the case. They got beat 52-3 or 52-7 or whatever it was. And you guys both picked Wisconsin. We all missed Rutgers covering against Nebraska. It was
by half a point.
By half a point. It was a 6.5 point spread. Nebraska won by 7. And then the Washington game, we even mentioned how we're like, this line looks tricky. Like they're going to get one over on us. We picked Michigan because we thought they were the better team. Washington covers, win by a couple scores.
Yeah.
So our gut instinct was there. We just didn't take it.
Yeah. I was the same, honestly, with that Oregon game, where I feel like we were even saying, like, Oregon might be looking ahead, but, let's go Oregon anyway. I had a feeling.
They should have covered. They had like 3 drives in the first half where they turned the ball over or like didn't score a touchdown, and it was closer than it should have been.
Yeah. And that, that Washington win really makes this Saturday's game even more interesting when they come to Iowa City.
Yeah, we should say it's a Fox 28 Big Noon kickoff game. Is it a must-win already?
It depends on what your goals are. I mean, it's a must-win if you want to be in the conversation for the Big Ten title game in the CFP. 100% must-win, like absolutely. It's almost like must-win and must impress. They must, win by a few scores for a lot of these games. And if just getting the postseason is your goal, I would say no. Like there's enough.
Well, that's not the goal, right?
Not for Hawkeye fans and coaches, certainly not. But yeah, so if depends on what the must is. If your eyes are on Indianapolis and a CFP, then yes, certainly must win. Big Saturday for Fox for the state of Iowa. Yeah, Iowa State going to be that evening on Fox. Is that right?
Yep.
A lot of things happening on Fox this weekend. But yeah, make sure that you follow the Eye on the Hawks podcast with the platforms. With YouTube, we're going to have a lot more. We didn't make the trip out to Columbus this week, of course. But in future episodes, we have a lot of great video from the games that we can roll and sound bites, and you can watch that when you follow us on Eye on the Hawks on the YouTube page. On X, you can follow Eye on the Hawks, Iowa's News Now on YouTube and Instagram. There's a lot of platforms out there that you can follow the channel, follow the high school and the college coverage, everything across the board. You're going to have a lot coming tomorrow and throughout the rest of this week. So for a absent Mitch Fick, who will be back with us on Wednesday, for Mike Howell, myself, Owen Sebring, we'll see you next time.